Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of On Writing. In this interview I speak to Goran Powell. He is a freelance writer, an author, a copywriter, and also a martial artist as well. It was a brilliant interview. There's so much knowledge and wisdom in here, and I really hope you enjoy it. There's some links through it that I'll put at the back end, some books he mentions, etc., and I'll put some links to his books as well. Take a listen. A lot of experience, a lot of wisdom, really good interview. So I hope you enjoy it and get a load out of it. All right, enjoy. Hi everyone. So I am here with one of my favourite authors and men, actually, a man named Goran Powell. I read his book Waking Dragons. I can't remember how long ago, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe more, and I absolutely loved it. At that time, I was training for my 30-man lineup. And I loved it because it was honest, but it was also really well written, because in the martial arts community, not everything is well written. Now, this isn't just for us martial artists, it's for all of you. It just happens to be that in our little group, there's quite a few of us who do martial arts. So I'm delighted to introduce Goran Powell. Goran, hello.
Hello, Matt. Hello, everyone. Good to meet you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your time on this. Let's. I've been looking through this. I thought I knew some stuff about you, but there's more. And I didn't realize you won the Eric Hoffer Award for Trojan, which was exciting. 2013, is that right?
That's right. Yeah. These were all my publisher in America put the book forward for these awards, which they're not the mainstream, but they're sort of smaller awards, more niche.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised, but every so often I'd get an email saying, "Brilliant news, you've won." But of course, these are all in America, so never went.
You were published with YMAA, is that right? Was that the That's what I saw on some of the back of them. Let's just quickly, can you just tell us a little bit about about yourself, what you're doing, what your links to writing, what your normal day is, and then we'll crack on from there.
Yeah, sure. Well, my job is a copywriter, which we talked about just before we started recording, but so. That's something that I started out almost at the beginning of my career. I started out in marketing, actually.
Okay.
And I studied languages, and that's what got me into writing, but in a very roundabout way, because I thought I wanted to be a translator, and then I thought I wanted to be a marketing guy working internationally. And then eventually we used to start briefing advertising agencies to come up with ads for our business. I worked in financial services, and they would come up with these headlines and these great bits of copy, and they would write brochures, and I got quite involved in that. And a lot of the time I would write it and people would say, "Oh, yours is better than theirs," which it probably wasn't, but it kind of introduced me to the creative process, which I had no idea about. You don't hear about writing as a career, really. And so I decided I wanted to be a copywriter, because you could work in your jeans and t-shirt and put your feet on the desk, and you didn't have to wear a suit and tie.
Greatest thing. Why did you do what you do? Because I work in jeans and t-shirt, but my foot on the desk. That's it. Interview is over. Nothing else needs to be.
It was so, you'd see them like with the layout pad, just the marker pen and the layout pad, drawing a stick man. And you think that is your job, to come up with ideas like that. Wow. And it was like being back in the art room at school. And the art room was always quite laid back. The atmosphere was different to classes, which were all formal. And I thought, if I could just be a writer, I could do that. And then I realized, obviously, while I could write, because I knew grammar, I'd done languages, but I realized writing advertising is a real skill and a craft.
Yeah.
And even though I had some inkling, I needed to teach myself. So I tried to get on some courses. I couldn't even get on a course. They wouldn't take me. But I picked up books and I just taught myself, and I did ideas, and I used to show it around to people, and they would just laugh at me. And, so I had to work very hard. But once I'd seen that job, I knew I wanted it. And in the end, I got a job because of my financial background. I got a job in a financial agency, and they said, "Yeah, your ideas are all right, but you got the knowledge." And we started working just as First Direct Bank came out.
Okay.
was a big thing in those days. And, I managed to get my foot in the door. I managed to prove myself. And each time I kind of moved to a slightly better job and a better agency, and I got more experience. And I've never really looked back. I love that whole process. It is that process of putting your feet on the desk, getting your pad out, doodling with headlines and pictures, trying to get an idea that resonates and persuades people. And, I always count myself lucky to be able to make money from doing what I love doing, basically.
There's no feeling, I'm not a copywriter, of course, but there's no feeling like it. And that, it's interesting you said that, because that wasn't on my list of questions, but now you've sparked that off. That moment, that sort of aha moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if this sounds a bit over the top, but sometimes I find that quite a spiritual moment, actually. That sort of, oh, boom, got it. When you can't work a paragraph or even an idea, and then you go, do you know what? I'm going to hand it over to whatever. Various people have their various things. And then you wake up or you go, that's it. That's where I want it to be. And it's a bit like, it's a bit taken over stuff. Do you I have that for sure. Just think, got it.
Where does it come from? These are sort of moments of inspiration, and you think, well, was that buried in my subconscious somewhere and it just bubbled up, or did something happen and go into my head from outside and manifest itself in this idea that works? And part of it is actually having people to bounce ideas off, because I work as a creative team, so I have an art director who basically he does all the visual side of things and I do all the words. And I've worked with him for 20 years now. We're business partners, and I'll kind of write a page of headlines and go, all right, which of these? And he goes, that one. And sometimes I think, oh yeah, because you get so into it that you lose track, and then he'll just go, this one is the right one.
Yeah.
Or he might go, none of these, mate, keep going, and I kind of, if I can persuade him, I know I'm on the right track, because he knows what he's actually someone who doesn't deal with words at all. He's a very visual person. Everything in his life is lines and design.
Right.
So for a line to work for him, I know I've cracked it in a way, because he's a very difficult person to work for.
That's interesting, actually. And that was the motivation behind this little community. It's just a small group. How Facebook allows you to do that. And it was exactly the same thing, thinking, because a lot of people were asking me, knowing that I'm writing full time, etc., and they were asking me, and I'm absolutely happy to answer individually. That wasn't my issue. But just like you, I thought it'd be nice if we had a melting pot of different ideas where people could bounce in and bounce off, and also feel comfortable and safe to do that. Yeah. Not to put something and put a question up and you suddenly get killed going, oh, how come you don't know that? And that, because you get that as well. But you're right. You need someone to bounce ideas off.
Absolutely.
Just copywriting. That for you guys who are listening, copywriting is brutal. If you want to tighten your writing in any way, copywriting is the bit I don't like that much, because it makes me I have to be disciplined, is when I write a pitch for my agent, right? And it has to be 15 words. And she keeps coming back going, no, it's, the elevator pitch. But copywriting and tweets, I said earlier, I only started a Twitter account it was a teaching aid, just to practice sharpening yourself. Can you tell us something about sharpening your writing?
Well, copywriting, it starts with the headline, and the headline can be anything from one word to, or maybe no words, or a shortish sentence. You don't want it to get too long. And there's no particular golden rule about it, but you want your headline to be something that really is the strongest foot forward that you can put. And even thinking about a book title, that's a headline in a way. Yeah. What is your headline? What is your descriptor subhead? And when we write headlines, rather than writing like you'd write a book, we will often spend 3 days writing headlines for one idea. And I'm talking about filling a page with lines, and then another page, and then another page, putting it aside, thinking about it a bit more, starting again from a slightly different angle. And I quite often write 10, 15 pages of lines.
Wow.
I'd be showing it to my mate Adrian, you know, who goes, no, don't like any of those, mate.
Yeah.
You know, so that is the level of detail that you can, and it's a really useful exercise, because what it does, it shows you that your first idea isn't always the best.
Yes.
The first idea is a useful one.
Yeah.
And it can, if you're experienced, it can often be a really good one. But then you know, once you've exhausted all your ideas around that sort of line, what else could you say? How else could you say it?
Yeah.
You start again. And eventually you get faster at that. But I still like, you know, 2 to 3 days to write what we would call a campaign. Is normally at least 3 ads, 3 different ads. So it'd be 3 different headlines, but all with an underlying theme that holds it together, which would be really the strap line.
Right.
And you need that amount of time to really delve deep and make sure you've got the best idea, and you're coming with your best foot forward. And, you know, now that I work in what's called shopper marketing, is specialism of advertising. This is at the point of sale where you're in the shop.
Right.
And here, you know, you haven't got even time to, if people aren't reading it like they'd read a magazine, they're walking past it to go and get the cornflakes.
You've got like no time to catch.
My boss says to me, your job is in 5 words or less to give me a reason to buy this and a call to action, and tell us what, you know, a bit about the product in 5 words or less.
That's a massive challenge, isn't it? That's I don't think people, maybe they do, but that's a massive challenge. It
is. And you know, you go away thinking it's impossible. And then you start, you're lucky you might find a word that has two sort of meanings. So it's buying you some extra space in there, you know, and it's doing a couple of jobs for you. And then you've got a couple more words. So, you know, you've got 5, you can go 6 or 7 words, or you can go 4 words, but you want to give them a reason to buy it, and you want a call to action, which is like get or take or buy or explore or try, you know, join. So it's a call to action in there. So this is what I do day to day. And this is why when it came to writing longhand, it wasn't so difficult. Long copy is, again, another skill, but each sentence you learn how to create it properly if you spend the time on that detail, you know.
That's really interesting. And I find as well with the typewriting, I say I'm not doing it as copywriting, but as blurb writing.
Yeah.
I find that it highlights if I actually know what I'm trying to say. Yes. I find that if I can say to someone really quickly in a sentence, this is what this. So my latest book, this isn't about me, but just as an example, my latest book, the new book, The Last Taboo, is basically the premise is our underlying fear of death is stopping us reaching our potential. Boom.
Yeah.
2 years ago, that wouldn't have been that. I would have fluffed and faffed and did this and all that sort of stuff. And I wouldn't really have known. And I find that once I know actually what I'm trying to say, and then I'm happy being that just a small thing to say, it kind of blooms. And I think a lot of writers would benefit from that, because so many people ask me and I say, what's your book about? And then you get a list and you go, you don't know what your book is yet, which is fine, but you've got to know what your book is.
Well, in advertising, this is the proposition. And you'll get a creative brief, and there'll be this 1-line proposition, and if it's a good brief, it's a good proposition. And a lot of briefs nowadays, you look around, you think, what is the proposition? Like you're saying, you know, there's loads of information, but you know, if you think of what a proposition is, when you proposition someone in a bar, it's your opening chat up line. And you're either going to get success or failure off the back of that. You're going to go further, or it's going to be a no. So your proposition isn't a creative headline, but it's a strategic, like you said, fear of death is stopping us from living. You know, that's a great thought. That's a strong idea there. as if I had that as a proposition, you could work headlines off that would be more captivating. But what underlines that is a strong thought, and you need to, like you said, you need to know what you're trying to say. And I find if I've got a brief without a proposition, I keep writing it until I've got a persuasive argument down in words in a sentence, and then I think, right, how now can I express that in a really captivating way, but I know what I'm trying to say.
And it's a weird thing, actually, because I think people are and I was definitely this before. I've been writing now a little while, but people are frightened by the shortness, thinking that we'll limit them. But it's like disciplining children when you teach. You're not limited by boundaries. You're expanded by boundaries. And it's a big mistake that the freer you are, the less you can focus. But as soon as you've got a kind of singular, boom, you get more ideas. That's a weird thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because then you can start. Once you know you've got a starting point that you believe in, you've got a jumping off point. You can go anywhere you want. But if you're still looking around here, well, what am I trying to say? I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. You can't start. You can't start creating yet. You can't start expressing. And this is one of your questions, which is what I really wanted to talk about, and I'm glad it was on your list.
Okay.
I'm a planner, as you've probably gathered from this.
I said to Sheza, because when we put them down, because she helped me with some of them as well, and then a lot of my guys sent me questions personally, and I went, Goran's definitely going to be a planner. There is no way he is not. I have, as a writer, I've met many other copywriters in agencies that I've worked in all around London, and many a copywriter has got a book that they want to do. And they've all got books in them. They're all writers. But the amount of people who have written half a book and then stopped and stalled is absolutely mind blowing. And they tell me about it, and I think it sounds brilliant. Finish it. I don't know where to go. And they've gone off and started writing, and they're beautiful writing as well. But they don't know where they're going. So it's like setting off on a journey where you don't know where you're trying to get to. Absolutely right. And that's, you see this Pantsers thing. So because you've done both, you've transcended from kind of work writing, and in your work here with Trojan Sudden Dawn, I haven't actually read Matryoshka. I haven't read that. When I was looking stuff up, I've read everything else. But you have made that break into sort of historical novel writing, and that's a different beast. That's where a lot of people in fiction feel they need to kind of pants it. Or for those who don't know, pantsing, it's just flying by the seat of your pants, coming as the muse takes you, darling. But it's a bit risky. But you clearly have worked, because those Trojan and A Sudden Dawn are big books, right? So that's a lot of work gone into those.
Yeah, and it was interesting because when I wrote Waking Dragons, it was quite an effortless write, because I'd actually written a few long articles about the experience already, and people had said, oh, that would make a great book. So I just kind of expanded it out, and I wrote from my own experience, and it wasn't a difficult challenge. But when I did Sudden Dawn, which was a massive book, and it's 150,000 words. It was very, looking back, crazily ambitious for me to try and do that. And I did a lot of research on writing novels, and I'll give you some great books that I think everybody should read.
Thank you.
But even then, I read about structuring drama and structure, and I planned it and I replanned it, and I got halfway through it, and I realised I still didn't know enough. Like I couldn't do dialogue. It wasn't. I had to put it down, go back and read another load of books about structuring dialogue, structuring drama, and then I thought, okay, I feel like I've done my research now, and I get it, and I was able to finish it. And one of my things I learned, I love that book, but out of all my books, it's the most amateurish because it was my first. And looking back, where I sort of broke the rules, where you'd read about plot and structure, and where I thought no, I'm going to decide to break that rule and talk about something that I want to talk about, even though it doesn't really fit the plot. This is where, looking back, I mean, I still like those bits of it, but they were the bits that everybody picked up on and said, doesn't fit the book.
Yeah, that's really...
And, you know, I wasn't prepared to kill that baby. I had a baby and I didn't kill it. And I wish I had, and I was naive. I mean, it's fine, you know. It's a good book, and there's a couple of bits where I didn't stick to, you know, the rigor of writing.
Yeah.
And I wish I had, you know. But I learned because
really, really great. Two things I love about that. One, please, this is not patronising, Hope, but the courage to do that, to say that, because a lot of people kind of balk from that, and obviously you're not that kind of guy, but a lot of people won't do that. They'll kind of hide from that in their work. But to actually say, I jumped off the track, that's one. And also the truth of that, because I think this is a thing you see with, so my brother has a real issue. My brother has a real issue with the phrase, everyone has a book in them. His line is, and I'll clean it up, have they heck, right? Because just as you say, he said it takes so much. He said, I would love to write Matt, but I would never get it done. He's an absolute prolific reader. He's brilliant, my brother, but he hasn't got what it takes to finish, because it's only half the battle, isn't it? And one of my issues, which kind of I am around it, but this is all kind of one thing, is this: everyone can write, which is great, but the problem is everyone can write.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Now, you know my stuff. I'm all up for people living their dreams. I absolutely am not a dream stamper. My whole work is based about step up to your next. However, I sit here now and listen to the amount of work that you have done, which is obvious. I know the amount of work I'm doing, right? Yeah. It's a bit annoying then when you read someone on a platform who is not doing the same work and putting themselves... Now, it's not a competition. I'm not saying it's a competition, but it's about holding yourself to a standard. You know what I mean? Yes. Go and read the books. If you're not going to go to uni, which I didn't want to go to university, right? I'm not that sort of learner. I have to learn on the move. If you do the mat hours, you wouldn't have a black belt without doing the mat hours. But for some reason, people think with writing, you can do your book without the mat hours, which drives me a little bit insane.
Absolutely, yeah. And it is the word writing, because we all learn to read and write at school. You know, we think writing that we learnt from Mrs. Jones in English in the fourth year is writing, and you still get people correcting your grammar based on rules that they remember from school. You know, writing at that level is a craft and a skill, and you know, I think it's
absolutely right, a craft and a skill. It so is that.
Yeah, and there's some people. I'm sure. You know, maybe there's some people who have been writing all their lives. They've read lots of literature, you know, Bernard Cornwell and those sort of people. Maybe they can just write a book. They probably can. But you know, for me, even I came to writing novels fairly late in the process. I had to do my work, you know, and for anyone who's interested in joining the group, you know, this is because you want to do that. You want to have your book on Amazon and on a bookshelf. You've got to put in the hours, like you said. It is like the hours on the mat. That's the same thing.
No, I absolutely agree with that, and it's worth the effort. That's part of because it's interesting. Once you get into structural theory, you then go down another rabbit hole. You start to get into the science of storytelling, which is a great book, by the way, by... can't remember, I'll send you the link later. You start to realize actually how storytelling has evolved for us as human beings. And then now once you go down that, you're into psychology, you understand why that line works. And even as a teacher or a writer, they're one of the same thing, right? You then start to go, that's why that's touching that person, that isn't touching that person, why that needs to be a short sentence, and that needs like Paul Auster sentences which go on for 2 or 3 pages without taking a breath. but it works. But it works.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, in that context, it really works. And I
Yeah.
find it a fascinating subject.
Yeah. One of the things, let's talk about some books, because there are some seminal books that people must read before engaging in writing. And I think, On Writing by Stephen King
Yep.
is a classic,
Invaluable.
probably the best. Another book that was recommended to me is called The Story by Robert McKee.
Got that one. That's absolutely vital.
Yeah, it's more like script writing, that, but even so, it's about dramatization. How, there's this, I think it's in that book, there's this lovely description where about the deck chairs on the Titanic, or on the cruise ship, where in the beginning of the chapter, all the deck chairs they always need to be swinging across this way, and then something tilts and they go this way. So something needs to change in each chapter. Either things are good up here and something bad happens, boom, and then something worse happens, and then we get a little bit better, and then something else comes. So I think it was Roald Dahl said, the cat sat on the mat is not drama. We all know that a cat sits on the mat. The cat sits on the dog's mat is drama.
That's really absolutely, isn't it? Just that, yeah. And we're back to copywriting now. The cat sat on a 7. Okay, so we're 2 over, but that'll do.
Yeah,
we're thereabouts.
And it's the same reason why in films, they don't show people going to the toilet. They don't show them doing stuff that doesn't have a reason. If it's showing something happening, it's because it's part of the plot. Things need to be happening. Things need to be changing, and then there needs to be a setup of some sort of jeopardy or goal or something that somebody's trying to attain, and then this journey from here to getting to that with all the obstacles is something we follow. And this is what we love about great drama is we get behind somebody and we root for them, and they had another problem, they've got to try even harder. And the amount of I have, people do send me books every now and then, and I think I've read 3 chapters and nothing's happened. They've done stuff, but nothing. There's no jeopardy. There's no nothing. And if you can't do drama, you can't write a book. And I'd say even for non-fiction, like stuff where I talk about my own experiences or how to train people and coach people, you need something to work towards. For someone to read that book as an interesting book, it needs to have a story.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think, in fact, I would say, because I've made the switch to fiction with this novel about South Africa.
Yeah.
One, because I was intimidated by it, is the truth. This is my 30-man lineup, right?
Yeah.
Because I put myself in that fiction. As a teacher, I've always thought it has to be true for me to say it. And it was both Sherry and my agent and Renata who challenged that, who went, you'll find some of the best teaching has come via fiction. And the reason you're not doing it is because you don't think you can. Boom. You think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think that all the things that show up when you get those manuscripts that you say you'll check for a friend stuff, that is indicative that they haven't studied story structure. Because I don't know who said, Oscar Wilde or whoever, that drama is real life with the boring bits taken out, or whatever it may be. And actually what you do is you get a load of these chapters of stuff that goes, but a reader, we don't go to the theatre to watch on the loo and in the bath bits.
Yeah.
Unless he drowns in the bath, of course. That sort of stuff. And that's a story structure problem, isn't it? Just not knowing your craft.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is the Sudden Dawn, which is, for those that haven't read it, it's the story of Bodhidharma, the ultimate kind of the first Shaolin monk, let's say, and his student, who are from legend, Hui Ko and Bodhidharma. That started off as a book that I was going to write as non-fiction.
Right.
And the idea was, I had a working title of Senpai Kohai, which is, this sort of senior, junior this relationship between someone who's gone before and someone who's following, and how it's symbiotic. You learn from each other.
Yeah.
And I thought, shall I write a book like that? And then I started thinking of illustrating it as in using examples.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, what about Bodhidharma? And then I thought this would work great as fiction.
Yeah.
And that's how I came to it. So it's exactly what Sherry said to you is like, I'm trying to say what I feel about the teacher and student and the whole learning karate relationship in Southern Dawn, in Chojan. It's always master and student.
Yes.
And how things work.
It's the mentor role, isn't it? In the K.M. Welland talks about that. There's always going to be some sort of mentor role that you need in somewhere.
Yeah.
And I see that in Karate on a Cushion, talking about how fiction can affect non-fiction beneficially, and vice versa. That of course you've got the narrative, the sort of story narrative of kind of the hardcore, this is how you do it, etc. But of course, it's played out through the stories of two characters, so you can see that all the way through. It's clever. Yeah,
that was my intention, was to sort of share a cross section of my journey from pretty much beginner to until I got to the stage where I felt like I could comment on it, and I got a good handle on it. And meeting Mike, who was my Zen teacher, who kind of opened up so many things to me very quickly. And I hope I've taken the reader on a journey, that was absolutely fascinating for me as a martial artist. And what I've found is other martial artists, it's resonated with them as a book. The people they're not that interested in it are the Zen people, because for them, they've got their own ideas about it already, and I've written about it from a very martial arts standpoint.
It's not for them, is it? It's not a read. No. It's like my books have got they're Buddhist influence, but they're not Buddhist books. You know what I mean? No. But they're for the market who are touch around it, who may have a little bit more insight around that, but certainly not as much as a Roshi. It's that sort of stuff, isn't it? I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
I like, that's really interesting. Let's hit a couple of. So have you self-published and traditional published, or only traditionally published?
I've done both, and it's an interesting question. And so with Waking Dragons, I sent it out to a load of agents. I got an agent who was interested. Out of 70 agents, I got 35 replies. And the last one was an agent, and I was just throwing it in the bin when I actually said I am interested, and I had to fish it out of the bin and get in touch with this guy, and he said, I like it, it's quite exciting. He tried to he sent it around to various publishers, didn't get any interest, and in the end he said, look, I've tried, I can't do anything more. So I was back to square one. And then through Ian Abernethy, who was working through Summersdale, I came to sort of an agreement with them where I kind of paid for it to be printed, but they would promote it and they sold it on their website. So it was a kind of hybrid self-publishing.
The hardest part was the same one for me. Same.
Yeah. And it did quite well. It got me recognised in the martial arts community. Yeah. And then the next book was Southern Dawn, and I got a publisher. This was in America, this Yang Martial Arts Association, which is basically Tai Chi, Chinese based, but they have karate, and they were trying to build up their fiction writing. So it was a case of the manuscript landed just at the right time. They were interested. They had an editor there who specifically wanted to do fiction. Okay. She loved the book. And that was it. Boom. And they produced it, and they were lovely to work with. The editor we worked well together. Her comments were, I liked them, so we got it done fairly easily. Yeah. But it didn't sell massively. It sold probably as much as Waking Dragons, but by the time by the time you get your percentage from a publisher, you know, they give you something like 10% of the actual sale of the book, not the list price, but the profit that they make from it.
Yeah.
It was working out as something like 40 cents or 60 cents
Yeah.
per book. So they would have to sell something almost 10 times as much as I was selling myself with Waking Dragons for me to make the same money. So unless it becomes a bestseller, you're not going to get the big bucks through that sort of deal. And we did Trojan as well. They again, it was a pleasure to work with them, but it just wasn't breaking out and becoming a really big seller. It just all helped me to establish like my name within the martial arts community. And this is what's important, is in the end I went back to self-publishing, because nowadays it's so easy with Amazon that you can literally, you send your PDF of your Word document and it appears. You either choose a cover or you get a mate to design it for you.
By the way, I love the cover of Karate on a Cushion. I love that cover.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a friend of mine who I said, can you do this sort of brushstroke image of him?
Stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and he did it, and it took a few goes, and he simplified it down, but he did it so brilliantly. He's a guy from karate, actually.
It's a great cover. I love that cover. Really nice. Sorry.
Yeah, I was so happy with it, and yeah, it worked really well. But you know, you can do that. It goes on Kindle, it goes on Amazon. When it's up on Amazon, it's print on demand. So there's no more boxes. Because when I published Waking Dragons, I had 20 cardboard boxes stacked all around my house, under my bed, you know, filled up the whole loft.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's print on demand. So if someone buys a print book, it gets printed off, the cover puts on, and it goes. So there's no cost of storage. For a normal sort of book, they'll take £5-6 roughly for the privilege of that, and anything more that you charge you can keep. But obviously the more you charge, the less people will buy it. So you want to make a pound or two on top of that. Kindle wise, you keep pretty much all of it, but Kindle books only sell quite cheap normally. The ones they'll normally recommend to you the best price to make the most profit. So for my book, for Karate on a Cushion, they said something like $3.49 was the price mark that fitted. So obviously you can charge $11 if you want, or whatever level you want, or you can give it away for free. But it all depends. People don't like to spend more than a few. You know, if people are looking for it and want it, then they'll pay for it. But if they come across it and they think, oh, that looks interesting, maybe, then they only want to pay a couple of dollars. They'll buy it. More than that, they might not. So it's a game. Yeah.
And I think if someone like yourself with writing integrity, who is, as we spoke about at the start, putting in the effort, I think self-publishing is fantastic.
Yeah.
But people still have to discipline themselves to do the work, because putting your own stuff on and getting a friend to, I know what will have gone through that. It's very different from just slapping stuff up. And what it can do, if it goes up weekly, it can bring down the image of self-publishing.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of times I've downloaded books myself and thought, really, this is your typesetting? You haven't even done a spell check? You know, has anyone read this and given you feedback? So this is something I wanted to mention as well. I think it's part of your questions, is the amount of different hats that you have to put on as a writer. And it's something where, again, discipline is the key word, because, you know, we talked about the planner. That's your first hat. And your discipline there is to think of the book, what's it about, really like nail down what we were talking about, the proposition, nail down the plot, and keep thinking about it for days and weeks until you've got all the plot and the structure correct. Then you can go into writer mode and start filling in these chapter headings that you've created. And for that, it's great to be a pantser at this stage, because You have to literally take off that sort of analytical hat and just let stuff out, and go longhand, just write it, and then, you know, write it again slightly differently, and don't worry about anything at this stage. Get it down, fill the sheets, get excited, and you have to kind of fall in love with your characters. Is something which, personally, this is where my motivation comes from to do this, is like, once I've got a character that I like, and maybe a teacher and a student and a baddie, you know, and I want this to happen. I want these interactions to occur, and write. I just get it down. I write it. I follow my plan, and every now and then, you know, you keep going as long as you can like that. But every now and then you think, oh, I want this to go a different way now against my plan. This character has come up with an idea of their own that I now prefer. So then you have to take that hat off, put your planner hat on, and
see where it fits back in the structure.
Yeah, can this still work? Can we switch this? Can this happen now? You replan and restructure all the way to the end. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck. Take that off. Get back to writer. Right. And once you get to there, then you become like an editor, and you as an editor, you go, no, this is too long. This is getting boring. This is all, you know, irrelevant. This bit's good. Keep going. And this is what an editor will be saying to you. But you can do it to yourself, and you should do it to yourself. And each time you have to be rigorous and disciplined. You have to, if you know, you have to feel like a completely different person reading your book. And how am I going to feel coming at this cold? Because when I was writing it, I knew exactly what was going on.
There, aren't you? You're skipping.
Yeah,
you don't even know the sentence you've misspelt because you've already. Yeah. How many times do you finish an article or a piece and go, "That's perfect"? You come back the other day and go, "How did I miss the hammer that's just hit me in the face? Was that was that always there?" But that's a weird thing, because there is a sort of like a writer's blindness, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's perfectly all right as long as you go back later and tidy yourself up.
Yeah.
You know, that's fine. And this process has to be repeated 3, 4, 5 times. You want to keep reading your book, set it aside, and once you've got the whole thing and you think you're right, it's still too early to show it to anyone. Set it aside. You know, normally they say 6 weeks, which is kind of right, I think, because by that time you are coming back at it fairly cold, and it's amazing how fast you read a good book, right? Because the better written it is, the more you just start falling through it. And like you said, a 3-page sentence is fine if that's a beautifully, properly written sentence.
Yeah.
You go to, and then you realise maybe you've repeated yourself because something that took you 2 days to write, you've read it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I find in this with Cindy Seaware is that because it's coming out at 1,200 words, and you're right. What started on chapter 1 in your warm up, because you really are, and you're doing this because you've worked it over 6 months. You come to the back end and realise how many times can that kid's heart thump in her throat? You know, and I've taken now to that to actually, and this was part of that science of storytelling. And I think in Stephen King talking about, it may have been, I can't remember, but literally two brains. A writing brain uses one part, and an editing brain. And I literally now download my stuff onto a Kindle, because there's too many pages and read it like I would read in the bath, on the loo, in bed, that sort of stuff. And if there's a point where if anywhere makes me stop, I will go, that's got to be edited. Because just as you say, because you don't, good ones, you just kept going. You just ended up going, oh, how did I get here? And it's an interesting process. I'm glad you said that, because I'm finding that. And I'm on draft 3 and still know there's going to be 4 or 5 more for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And that is such a good, you know, the right way to do it. And I find when I've written a normal book, I need to find kind of 2 days, ideally 1 day, but 2 days probably to. And I do eventually, I do read it on the Kindle, and I read it in a Word docs But at one time I also print it out, because even just reading it in a slightly different format or a feel has a slightly different flavour to it.
Yeah.
And I'll print off, 120 sheets of paper with it written on, and get everyone out of the house and settle down on the sofa and read it as fast as I can. And then I'll stop for lunch and get back into it, because if you want to read it all in a day or 2 days at the most to get a full sense of it.
As a reader.
Yes. Yeah. And you feel like, does this book, drag a bit in this bit, or does this need more? And you just notice things that you wouldn't notice at a slower pace.
I cannot agree with that more. And this is the thing I see with some of the stuff I've read that people are struggling with. You just know that has not been read as a reader.
Yeah.
And the other thing I like to do, again, I'm sure I read it in Stephen King's book, or maybe somewhere else. I've written, is reading the stuff out loud, because you find out where the rhythm catches in your throat or even in your mouth. Do you find that where you just go, I thought that was working, but I literally can't get it past my lips? So it's and then that's it's a timing thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And then, like you said, writing the pitch, writing the blurb on the back cover, and what would it say on Amazon, and what would maybe be the tagline underneath. All that is stuff that I normally do at the same time as writing the book. I'll have a few pages of potential titles, a few pages of the blurb, and every few days I'll go back to it and think, is there anything better than this I could do? Or is there anything in this blurb that I could improve? And I just tweak a word. So that's what I call for short time when I'm at work, let's say.
Yeah.
So I haven't got time to write chapters, but every now and then, one of the great things I like about writing is sort of putting that aside for a bit and just writing something different, and then bringing it back, and it gives you that new freshness to look at it. So I kind of work my day in compartmentalizing. I'll work for Lego for 2 hours, and then I'll spend 20 minutes looking at my own stuff just to clear my head, and I bring that Lego stuff back.
That's really interesting, because that is I find writing at the moment. I'm writing 2: the novel and The Last Taboo, so fiction and non-fiction, and that not only is the switch helping, but also one is supplying the other, which is a really weird. I didn't expect that. I was just forced into it because we know an autumn deadline, but actually one is definitely fueling the other.
It is because ideas for writing, that a lot of it comes from your subconscious, and to create in one way just keeps those juices flowing, and then helps you create in a different way. But it keeps you creative. It just keeps you fresh. And I've noticed that the times when I don't write at all, it just starts to go, and it is like fitness, really. You need to don't push it too hard, but you need to cultivate it and feed it in a sense, keep it going.
You need a regular, again, mat hours, to bring back to a martial arts or a karate analogy. You do need the mat hours. You wouldn't expect to block if you haven't been there for 6 weeks, right? Yeah. And I think that's absolutely vital for writing too.
But you have to, you have to have the passion for it to want to produce it, because it is really hard work. And if it wasn't that hard work, everyone would write their book and it'd be out there. But the amount of time, it's fine. The good bits are fine. You write them. When you get stuck, trying to overcome those is blood, sweat, and tears. You have to rewrite. You have to re-strategize. It takes a lot of effort. It does take a lot of effort. So you have to have a real passion. And I remember with Sudden Dawn thinking, I love Bodhidharma and what he stands for, and I love this relationship that sort of encapsulates what I love about karate and martial arts. And I can feel like I'm getting it down on paper and on a page, and there's bits of it that are electrifying me as I'm writing them. I hope they'll be electrifying for readers, but I find it exciting. And I really want to get this get this down and finish it. And this was, you know, a massive book, and it took hours upstairs in the office when I could have been down with the family, and working late at night when I, you know, and I'd work the next day. But I didn't begrudge it, because I really wanted to bring this to life. It was like my baby, like a garden that you're sort of planting and you're trying to grow it. And but what I would say to your writers is that moment when you get your book through the post and you take it out of the envelope, you know, you must know, Matt. I mean, wow.
It's an amazing feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, you give it to your sensei or your friend, or you show it to and it's got your name on it, and it's put it on your bookshelf. I mean, that makes it worth it, but it's a lot of work to get to it.
It is a lot of work, and it is so similar to martial arts, isn't it? Everyone wants a black belt, everyone wants a book on the shelves, everyone wants a top 10 single, and but actually the work behind it is relentless. And actually, and if you didn't love it, then well, as you've already said, you would just have a book halfway through that you go, you know what, I've got better things to do. But listen, I'm mindful of your time. Can I just ask you a couple more things, and then I'll leave you? I could talk to you forever. I absolutely love it. So I'm just going to talk about this
forever. Don't worry.
You know, I love it. So let's ask about, because there are a few here. Let's pick a couple. It's an overwhelming process, right? I mean, we've talked in an hour, and we've mentioned so many things. So let's say someone's coming to this and they've got a passion, but they're listening and going, oh, hell's bells, I hadn't planned on that. So what 3, I know there are more probably, but what 3 things would you say to that newbie, just to go, look, settle down, you know, like a Strunk type style, to get it right down to 3 ideas and go, start with this, off you go.
For writing a book, to get a book written. Well, I would say, you know, get that lift pitch, that synopsis written, and it varies in length. People sometimes say it should just be half a page, and sometimes they say it should be 3 pages. But you know, you want to, if you can write down across one of my disciplines that I pride myself on as a writer is you can tell me how many words you want, and I'll deliver it, whether it's 1 word or 100,000. You know, and that's something I've come at over many years as a writer. And I work with my art director, and you know, the joke normally is the art director will go, I've got room on this poster, I need 2-word headline, or I need a 1-word, or I need a long line because it's not looking right. And that's a bit of an in-joke, but I honestly believe that you should be able to write to any length, because what do you want to say? You know, you've got to prioritize. So where this is going is you should be able to write a name for your book, a 1-line descriptor, paragraph / 2-paragraph descriptor that would go on the back of the book, and a 3-page explanation, which is a kind of synopsis of the story to send to an agent. So get those written, you know, and that, if you can, that's what people judge. That is the elevator pitch. You know, people will look at that and go, right, okay, I'll start reading this enormous manuscript that someone sent me on the basis of this little bit of writing. It's either sold me as an interesting idea or it hasn't. And that is the skill. And if you can't write your own idea in that format, you ain't going to get anywhere. You know, you ain't going to be able to write a whole manuscript for a start. So that is the discipline, you know. The title, the subhead, the paragraph, the 2-pager, you know, that sort of length. And don't think in terms of words, though. You know, say something exciting to me. Tell me something that only you can talk about. Like, I've got a mate of mine, and I'm hoping when you publish this, I'm gonna put him in touch with it, because he's writing a book. He's not a writer. He's written a couple of articles. He's a karate guy, and he said, I want to write about, you know, my life in karate. And I said, well, what can you say, that what's it going to be about? What's your thing? And we talked a bit, and I said, Mike, what I think of you is you're someone who goes everywhere and trains with everybody. And that's normally a bit of a no-no. We always say, stick with something. Get but he's kind of my age, he's my sort of level, but he's trained in Shotokan, he's trained with Enoeda, Kanasoe, then Goju, but he goes to each place, he goes and trains there. And I said, my title for you is Confessions of a Karate Vagabond, because you have gone everywhere and picked up bits and pieces from here, there, and everywhere, put it into a book, and it's a ready-made book, because each place he goes to, he picks up just enough to come away with some really interesting stuff from that teacher and that style. And this guy's great at Hojo Undo, and this guy's great at Kumite, and put it together. That's your book. That's a book that only you can write, because
that's the actual message going on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it is so many people are not clear though of that, are they? Of their central, not even the central message, any message.
Yeah, find something that someone, if you were in a bar with your mates and you were telling them something that they would at least be wanting to listen to, find something. If you can't, then you haven't got a book in you. But most people at least can have a tone of voice, and that's the other thing is, I have my own tone of voice. I have this style that kind of I like. It's got this slightly Zen way. I think yours is similar. Yeah. But you could be a complete Gavin, for example. My instructor Gavin is very different. Yeah. He's the sort of guy. You were there with a pint of Guinness, telling old stories about being a bouncer in the pub. He's got that sort of style. Yeah. My friend Mike's got a different style. He'll challenge people and ask really almost impertinent questions, but rile them up. Yeah. And then get them talking, and so find your style and your tone of voice, and it has to reflect you, and then find your audience, the kind of people that would like to listen to that. Yeah.
Listen, it's just gone 5. As I say, I could keep this forever, and maybe we could do another time as well. Yes, but I'm very mindful of your time. Is there anything you would like to? I mean, this has been amazing. I can't even begin to. This has just been perfect at every level. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with on writing?
I think we've covered.
We have really
everything that I made a little list of the things I feel are important, and we've absolutely talked about all of them. I would wish people good luck with it, and I would say that I got a few breaks from people along the way from who helped me out, and if you or anyone does get there in the end, then pass it on down, because if it hadn't been for Jeff Thompson, who wrote my foreword, I sent him the book, but he phoned me up and said, it's Jeff Thompson, and I just couldn't. I thought someone was winding me up. Yeah. I said, I love your book. I'm gonna, how can I help you? Do you want me to write a foreword for you? I hadn't even asked him to do it. I didn't even think of that, and he offered, and that made a huge difference. And then Ian Abernethy kind of said, oh, well, let me put you in touch with the person I was dealing with. Yeah. And something happened from that, so use people in the group, or make contacts and pass it on up and down the stream, because we have to do it like that.
Yeah, no, that is a perfect COVID-19 lockdown, all shaved head message to finish on. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much.